The days stretched long. Clara worked as always, tireless. Anna explored every corner of the ranch, her laughter piercing the hard silence like sunlight through clouds. One afternoon, Hale found the girl sitting on the porch, whittling a stick with a too-big knife. She grinned at him, missing front tooth on display. "Mama says you're the Baron." He arched a brow. "And what do you say?" "I say you look sad." Her blunt honesty startled him more than a bullet. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure of what to say. She skipped off, leaving him staring after her, chest hollowed out. That evening, the air cooled. Stars began to scatter across the black. Clara tucked Anna into the cot near the kitchen hearth. The girl asked, "Mama, sing." So Clara did. A soft lullaby, her voice cracked and imperfect, but tender. She sang of home, of fields now gone, of love that survived loss. Hale, passing the hall, stopped. The song spilled through the doorway like water over stone, washing through him. He gripped the doorframe, eyes shut. He remembered his wife singing once, long ago, before silence claimed his house. The sound of Clara's voice ached inside him. And he hated it, because it reminded him he was still alive. By week's end, a rider galloped in, breathless, had askew. "Raiders," he gasped. "They hit the McCullen ranch. Killed the stock, near burned the house." The ranch stilled. Even the cattle seemed to hush. Hale's face turned hard as iron. "Mount extra patrols," he ordered. "We double watches. No man sleeps through the night." Clara's stomach nodded. She pulled Anna close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. She was only a woman with a mop and a child. But the storm rolling over the land didn't care. That night, she lay awake, listening to the wind. Every creak of wood, every coyote howl sounded like the crack of a gun. Anna slept peacefully in her arms, her small breath warm against her chest. Clara kissed her forehead, fiercely, as if the act itself could shield her. In the shadows of the hall, Baron Hale watched again. Watched the mother's devotion. Watched the innocence of the child. And felt fear, not for himself, but for them. The narrator's voice closed in. And as the sun set on that ranch, the shadows grew longer. The Baron thought himself a man who had nothing left to lose. But now, he feared he had everything. The night fell heavy over the plains, the sky choked with clouds that smothered the stars. The air was too still, too silent, like the prairie itself was holding its breath. Baron Hale stood on the porch, rifle resting against his shoulder, eyes fixed on the horizon. He had posted guards around the cattle pens, doubled the watch, armed the hands. Still, unease gnawed at his gut. Behind him, faint through the shuttered window, he heard Clara's voice. She was settling Anna to sleep, whispering a prayer, kissing the girl's forehead as if it could keep the darkness away. That image, mother and child wrapped in fragile love, burned in him, harder than whiskey ever had. Then the dog barked. Not the idle bark of a restless hound, but a sharp, frantic warning. Hale straightened. The guards shouted. And then, gunfire, the ranch exploded into chaos. Outlaws poured from the dark like wolves, revolvers flashing in the night. Their horses thundered through the dust, hooves pounding, men hollering curses. Muzzles sparked like fireflies in the gloom. "Raiders," someone yelled. Hale raised his rifle, fired into the night. A rider pitched from his saddle. Another bullet whizzed past his ear, splintering the doorframe behind him. "Get to cover." Hale roared. The ranch hands scrambled. Cattle bawled and surged against their pens, panic ripping through the herd. Inside the kitchen, Clara grabbed Anna, pulling her close. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She had known fear, but never like this, gunfire tearing the air, men screaming, wood shattering. Anna's eyes widened, lips trembling. "Mama." Clara shoved her under the heavy oak table. Stay here. Don't move. Not for anything. Then she ran, her boots skidded across the dirt as she burst outside. A stray bullet snapped past her cheek. She snatched up the shotgun Hale had shown her, planting her feet just as he'd said. One rider charged close, pistol raised. Clara fired. The blast roared, kicking her shoulder hard, but the outlaw toppled backward, his gun spinning into the dirt. Every man who saw it froze a second, then the fight surged harder. Hale caught sight of her, hair wild, dress torn, smoke curling from the shotgun. His chest clenched, not with fear, not with anger, but with awe. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting. He shouted across the chaos, "Stay back, damn it." But she didn't. She loaded again with shaking hands, jaw set. This was her child's life on the line. There was no room for fear, the Coulter gang was ruthless, their leader a scarred brute with eyes like cold steel. "Burn it," he bellowed. "Drive the cattle, take the spoils." Torches arced through the air. Flames licked at the barn, dry wood catching fast. Smoke curled upward, choking, glowing orange against the black sky. Hale's fury surged. This ranch was more than land, more than cattle, it was his blood, his past, his only anchor. And now, with Clara and Anna inside its walls, it was his future. He fought like a man reborn, firing shot after shot, swinging the butt of his rifle when bullets ran low. A ranch hand fell beside him, got shot. Hale dragged the boy to cover, teeth gritted, refusing to let death take another. Through the haze of smoke, he saw Clara again, reloading, firing, her body trembling but unbroken. She stood like a wall before the kitchen door. Behind her, he knew, the little girl waited. And something inside him shifted. He realized he wasn't fighting just to protect land. He was fighting for them. Then it happened. In the chaos, Anna crawled from under the table, searching for her mother's voice. The door had been left ajar, smoke curling inside. Small feet pattered across the boards as she slipped outside. An outlaw spotted her, a grinning, rotten-toothed rider swinging down from his horse. He snatched her up, her scream piercing the roar of battle. "Got the brat," he hollered. Clara spun, scream ripping from her throat. "Anna!" She ran, but too far, too late. The outlaw shoved the girl onto his horse, spurred it hard. And then Hale moved. He dropped his rifle, sprinting, body low, legs burning. In 2 strides he reached, yanked the outlaw clean from his saddle. They crashed into the dirt, rolling, fists and knives flashing. Hale's hand clamped on the man's throat. The outlaw slashed at his ribs, tearing cloth, grazing skin. Pain flared hot, but Hale's rage was hotter. With a grunt, he drove the man's skull against a rock. Once. Twice. Until he lay still. The horse reared, Anna tumbling into the dust. Clara scooped her up, clutching her to her chest, sobbing relief even as bullets cracked overhead. Hale staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his side, eyes blazing like the fire behind him. "Stay with her," he barked to Clara. Then he turned back to the fight. The barn was an inferno now, cattle stampeding in blind terror. Men shouted, chasing strays, fighting raiders, dragging the wounded clear. The Coulter gang, seeing the tide turn, began to break. A few dead, more wounded, their leader howling curses as he rode off into the night. Gunfire dwindled, replaced by the roar of flame and the ragged cries of the injured. Hale fired one last shot after the retreating shadows, then lowered his rifle. His chest heaved, sweat and blood streaking his face. Silence, broken only by the crackle of fire. By the time dawn bled pale across the land, the worst had passed. The barn was half collapsed, smoldering. 2 ranch hands lay dead, 3 more wounded. The herd was scattered but not lost. Clara sat on the porch steps, arms locked around Anna. The girl slept at last, face smudged but safe. Hale stood nearby, bandaged hastily, his shirt torn and dark with blood. He looked at them, the woman, the child, and something broke loose inside him, clean and unstoppable. No longer were they just strangers seeking shelter. They were the only light in his broken world. And for the first time in years, he felt fear, not of death, not of loss, but of what it would mean if he let them go. The narrator's voice carried like the wind through ashes. The raid had left scars of fire and blood. But for Baron Hale, it had done something more. It had carved into him the truth, that his silence, his grief, his hardened heart, could not stand against a woman's courage, or a child's love. The dawn after the raid stretched long and quiet. Smoke drifted from the ruins of the barn, curling into the pale sky like the ghost of all that had been lost. The prairie, scarred and smoldering, lay silent, except for the faint ball of scattered cattle. Baron Hale leaned against the porch post, a strip of cloth bound tight around his ribs. Pain throbbed with every breath, but he paid it little mind. His eyes, bloodshot from sleepless hours, were fixed on Clara and Anna. Clara sat on the steps, her arms wrapped around her daughter. Exhaustion lined her face, but so did strength, the kind that came from surviving fire and blood and refusing to break. Anna stirred in her sleep, curling into her mother's lap. Clara brushed a hand across her hair, whispering words Hale couldn't hear. And watching them, Hale felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. For 2 days, the ranch worked like a wounded animal. Men buried their dead, patched the fences, counted what remained of the herd. Smoke clung to the air, and every creak of saddle leather carried the memory of gunfire. Hale moved among them, bandaged but unbending, silent as ever. Orders left his mouth in clipped words, his presence steady like an anchor. But Clara saw more. She saw the shadow behind his eyes, the way his hand lingered on the burned timbers of the barn, the way he winced when Anna wrapped her small arms around him in gratitude. He wasn't just a baron of land and cattle. He was a man fighting ghosts. On the third night, when the ranch finally lay quiet, Clara found him alone by the fire pit, staring at the embers. The glow painted his scarred face in flickering light. "You should rest," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "I don't rest." She stepped closer, folding her arms. "You don't speak much, either." A silence stretched between them. Then he murmured, voice low as gravel, "Talking doesn't bring back the dead." Clara's breath caught. For the first time, he had spoken of it. She lowered herself beside him, skirts brushing the dust. "Your wife," she whispered, not as a question but as a truth. Hale's jaw tightened. His gaze fixed on the flames. "Long ago. Bandits. Same as Coulter's kind. I buried her out here, under the lone oak." His voice cracked, the faintest fracture. "I swore I'd never fail again. So I built walls. Around this land. Around myself." Clara's eyes softened. She reached, hesitated, then laid her hand on his arm. "But walls don't keep pain out. They just keep life out." He turned to her then, eyes burning, not with anger, but with the raw weight of a man stripped bare. "You should hate me," he rasped. "You and the girl. You were nearly killed because of me. Because trouble follows men like me." Clara shook her head, her voice steady. "You fought for us. You bled for us. That doesn't look like a man who brings trouble. That looks like a man who stood between death and a child." For the first time in years, Baron Hale let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. It shook him, raw and unsteady, that a small voice broke the silence. "Don't cry." They turned. Anna stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, hair tangled from sleep. She stepped forward, barefoot, clutching her little rag doll. "Don't cry," she repeated, climbing into Hale's lap as if it were the most natural thing. Her small hands pressed to his chest. "You're big and strong. Mama says strong men don't cry. Clara gasped softly, but Hale's face crumpled. He wrapped his arms around the child, burying his face in her hair. For once, he didn't hide. And in that moment, the silence that had haunted him for years broke. The days that followed were not easy. The ranch bore scars, the men carried grief, the land smelt of ash. But there was a shift, a thread of warmth where before there had been only cold duty. Hale rode out with his men to track the scattered cattle. Clara tended wounds, sewed torn shirts, cooked meals that tasted of comfort instead of necessity. Anna laughed again, her giggles chasing away shadows like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Each night, they ate together. Each night, Hale's words grew longer, his silence shorter. He spoke of the land, of storms past, of the herd. Clara listened, shared her own stories of hunger and loss, of the courage it took to leave behind ruin. And slowly, something unspoken wove between them. Not just survival. Belonging. One evening, under the lone oak where his wife's grave lay, Hale stood with Clara. He had brought her there not with words, but with the quiet gravity of a man finally ready to share his deepest scar. "This is where she rests," he said. "I thought I'd never stand here with another soul. Thought it'd be betrayal." Clara's hand slid into his. "It isn't betrayal to live again. It's betrayal to stay buried with the dead." The wind sighed through the branches. For a long moment, Hale's eyes searched hers, heavy with pain and longing. Then, like a dam breaking, he bent and pressed his lips to hers. It wasn't the kiss of a polished suitor. It was rough, trembling, desperate, a man rediscovering what it meant to feel alive. Clara's tears mingled with his. She kissed him back, not with pity, but with the strength of a woman who had fought, bled, and endured. And for the first time since the fire that had burned his life to ashes, Baron Hale felt whole, the ranch healed. Grass grew again where blood had spilled. The herd grew fat, calves running wild across the pasture. And Baron Hale, once a man locked in silence, found his voice again. He laughed when Anna tugged his beard, he scolded the hands with gruff humor, he spoke to Clara in quiet moments when the world fell away. People began to whisper across the plains that the lonely baron, the silent cattle king, had been tamed not by guns or gold, but by a widow's courage and a child's love. On a spring morning, Clara stood on the porch, watching him ride back from the range with Anna perched before him on the saddle. The child's laughter rang across the prairie like church bells. Clara's heart swelled. He caught her eyes, tipped his hat, and for once, his smile was unguarded. The narrator's voice carried like the prairie wind. The Baron had been a man of walls, of silence, of grief carved deep as canyon stone. But love, unexpected, uninvited, had found a crack in the stone. And through that crack the heart of a Baron beat again.